Jake's phone buzzed at midnight. A message from Ryan. I'm outside. Needed to see you. Heart racing, Jake rushed to open his Seattle apartment door, only to find his old friend trembling, eyes wide with fear. What had driven Ryan across the country in the dead of night? Jake, 38, hadn't seen Ryan, 21, in years, not since they were teens sharing secrets and dreams in their small hometown. He flung the door open, and there Ryan stood, clutching a backpack, his breath uneven. Without a word, Jake pulled him inside, sensing trouble. You okay? He asked, voice low but urgent. Ryan shook his head, dropping his bag. I had to get out of Chicago. Dad, he found out. Jake's stomach twisted. He knew Ryan's father, Tom, from their own childhood, his rigid rules, his quick temper. Jake guided Ryan to the couch, grabbing a glass of water. Talk to me, he said, sitting close, ready to listen. Ryan's hand shook as he sipped, his voice breaking. He saw my texts. With a guy. He flipped, said I'm a disgrace. The words hit Jake like a punch. He'd faced that same judgment years ago, hiding his truth as a gay man to avoid his town's scorn. Seeing Ryan's pain now, he felt a fierce need to protect him. You're safe here, Jake said, his tone steady. You're not a disgrace. You're you, and that's enough. Ryan's shoulders slumped, relief flickering in his eyes. Jake's small act of kindness, opening his home, offering refuge, felt like a lifeline in the tense silence. But the moment shattered when Ryan's phone lit up with Tom's name. Ryan froze, his breath hitching. Don't answer, Jake urged, sensing the storm brewing. Ryan ignored the call, but a voicemail pinged through, Tom's voice booming even on speaker. Ryan, you get home now. We're not done talking. The demand dripped with authority, a discipline that felt more like punishment than concern. Jake clenched his fists, anger flaring. He remembered Tom's lectures, the way he'd shut down anything that didn't fit his narrow view of right. Talking, Ryan muttered, bitter. He means yelling. You want me to fix this like it's a problem. Jake leaned forward, his voice firm. You don't need fixing. You need space to be yourself. Ryan nodded, but doubt lingered in his posture. Jake knew this wasn't just about one fight. It was years of pressure, of hiding who Ryan was to please a father who wouldn't bend. The night stretched on, their conversation diving deeper. Ryan admitted he'd been seeing someone in Chicago, a quiet relationship he'd kept secret. I thought I could handle it, he said, voice cracking. But Dad went through my phone, called it a sin. Jake's jaw tightened. He'd faced that word too, from a pastor back home who'd branded his identity as wrong. The injustice of it, condemning someone for who they are, stoked a fire in him. He wanted to shield Ryan, to fight for him, but he knew words alone wouldn't undo the hurt. Then came a knock at the door, sharp and insistent. Jake's pulse spiked. Stay here, he told Ryan, moving to check. Through the peephole, he saw a delivery guy, holding a package. False alarm, but the tension lingered. Ryan's phone buzzed again, another call from Tom. This time, Ryan silenced it, his hands trembling. He won't stop, he whispered. He thinks he can control me. Jake sat back down, resolve hardening. He can't. Not here. You're staying as long as you need. Ryan looked at him, gratitude mixing with fear. What if he comes after me? He asked. Jake didn't have an answer, but the question hung heavy, a spark of conflict igniting. Tom wasn't just Ryan's father. He was Jake's old friend, someone he'd once trusted. Now, that bond felt like a fault line, ready to crack. As dawn crept closer, Jake made a silent vow. He'd help Ryan find his strength, no matter what it cost. But he couldn't shake the dread building inside. Tom's voicemail echoed in his mind, a warning of more confrontations to come. Ryan needed him, but standing up to Tom might mean losing a friend. Or worse, facing the same judgment Jake had spent years escaping. The stakes were rising, and there was no turning back. The phone rang again, Tom's name flashing like a warning siren. Jake grabbed it from Ryan's trembling hands, silencing the call before it could shatter the fragile calm. He can't hurt you here, Jake vowed, but the fear in Ryan's eyes said otherwise. What secret was tearing him apart? Jake, 38, sat across from Ryan, 21, on the couch in his Seattle apartment, the late-night air thick with tension. Hours earlier, Ryan had arrived, fleeing his father Tom's wrath after being outed in Chicago. Jake's quick decision to take him in, offering water and a safe space, had steadied Ryan, but the weight of Tom's voicemail, "Get home now," lingered like a threat. Jake's protective instinct kicked in again. He slid Ryan's phone out of reach, his voice firm. You don't have to face him alone. Ryan's gratitude shone through his tense nod, a spark of trust that made Jake feel like a shield against the storm. Ryan's voice cracked as he began to speak, each word a struggle. I didn't mean for him to find out. I was careful, but there was this guy, Alex. We were just texting, meeting up sometimes. Dad saw it all. Jake listened, his heart sinking. He knew that betrayal. Someone prying into your truth before you're ready. Years ago, a coworker had outed Jake to his boss, leading to snide comments and a job he'd had to leave. He leaned closer, his tone soft but resolute. You didn't do anything wrong. Loving someone isn't a crime. Ryan's eyes met his, a flicker of hope breaking through his fear. Jake's words, simple but fierce, were a lifeline, pulling Ryan from the edge of despair. But the moment of solace was short-lived. Ryan's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. You're throwing your life away. Fix this, or don't come back. The ultimatum hit like a slap, its harsh discipline cutting deep. Ryan's hands clenched, his voice barely a whisper. He thinks I'm broken. Like I can just stop being me. Jake's anger flared, not at Ryan, but at the injustice of a father demanding his son erase his identity. He remembered his own years of hiding, pretending to be someone else to avoid rejection. He's wrong, Jake said, his voice steady despite the fury inside. You're not broken. You're whole, just as you are. The conversation turned raw, each confession peeling back layers of pain. Ryan admitted he'd spent years dodging questions about girlfriends, faking interest to keep Tom happy. I thought if I hid it long enough, it'd go away, he said, his voice thick with regret. Jake nodded, sharing his own story. How he'd moved to Seattle to escape his hometown's judgmental whispers, only to find the loneliness of living half a truth. Their shared struggle wove a bond, a silent pact to hold space for each other's truth. Jake's courage in opening up, despite his own scars, made Ryan feel seen, a small but heroic act that deepened their connection. Then, a new message pinged, Tom again, I'm booking a flight. We're talking face-to-face. Ryan's breath hitched, panic rising. He's coming here, he asked, voice shaking. Jake's mind raced. Tom's arrival could force a confrontation neither was ready for. He pictured Tom's stern glare, the same one that had silenced Jake as a teen when he dared to question the rules. The injustice of Tom's control, demanding Ryan conform to his expectations, felt suffocating. Jake stood, pacing, his resolve hardening. If he comes, we'll face him together. But you decide what to say, not him. Ryan's phone kept buzzing, each notification a reminder of Tom's relentless pressure. Jake grabbed a notebook, scribbling ideas, ways to help Ryan stand his ground, maybe even find support in Seattle's community groups. There are people here who get it, Jake said, his voice urgent. Places you can go, where you'll be accepted. Ryan nodded, but his eyes darted to the door, as if Tom might burst through any second. The tension spiked, the threat of Tom's arrival looming like a storm cloud. Jake felt the weight of his promise to protect Ryan, but doubt crept in. Could he stand up to Tom, his old friend, without breaking their bond? And what if Ryan cracked under the pressure? As the clock ticked past 2 a.m., Ryan's voice grew quieter. I just want to be free, he said, almost to himself. Jake's heart ached. He wanted that for Ryan too, but freedom came with a cost. Tom's texts, his looming visit, were a reminder that their fight wasn't just personal. It was against a world that often refused to let them be. Jake made another vow, silent but fierce. He'd help Ryan find that freedom, no matter what stood in their way. But with Tom closing in, the conflict was only beginning, and the stakes were higher than ever. A sharp knock jolted Jake awake at 4 a.m., the sound slicing through the quiet. Ryan, curled on the couch, froze, his eyes wide with dread. It's him, he whispered, certain Tom had come to drag him back to Chicago. Jake's heart pounded. Could he protect his friend from the storm about to break? Jake, 38, sprang from his chair, where he'd been dozing after hours of talking with Ryan, 21. The night had been heavy with confessions. Ryan's fear of his father's judgment, Jake's own battles with hiding his identity as a gay man. Jake's choice to shelter Ryan, to listen and affirm him, had forged a bond, a quiet heroism that gave Ryan strength. Now, as the knock echoed again, Jake moved to the door, motioning for Ryan to stay back. I've got this, he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. He cracked the door, expecting Tom's stern presence, but found only a neighbor, apologizing for a mistaken delivery. Relief washed over him, but Ryan's tense posture didn't ease. Jake returned to the couch, sitting close. "It's okay, just a mix-up," he said, trying to calm Ryan's shaking hands. Ryan's phone, now silenced, still glowed with unread messages from Tom. Each one a demand to return, to fix himself. The injustice of it burned in Jake's chest. He remembered his own run-ins with discipline, his parents' cold silence when he'd hinted at his truth, the pastor's lectures branding him as wrong. Ryan didn't deserve this, not for being who he was. "He can't force you to change," Jake said, his words fierce. "You're staying here until you're ready to decide." "Not him." Ryan nodded, but his voice trembled. "What if he shows up?" He said he's booking a flight. The threat of Tom's arrival hung heavy, a ticking clock fueling their fear. Jake grabbed his laptop, pulling up resources, local support groups, a hotline for LGBTQ+ youth. "We're not alone in this," he said, scribbling numbers. His quick action, researching help for Ryan, was a small but powerful gesture, showing his commitment to stand by his friend. Ryan watched, gratitude flickering, but the weight of Tom's words kept him on edge. Then, Ryan's phone buzzed with a new voicemail. Jake hesitated, but Ryan played it, Tom's voice sharp. "You're shaming our family, Ryan. I'm landing tomorrow. We're settling this." The words were a whip, each one laced with control, not care. Jake's anger surged. Tom's demand wasn't just unfair, it was cruel, stripping Ryan of his right to exist as himself. Ryan's shoulders hunched, his voice barely audible. "He's always been like this. Everything's about his rules." Jake leaned forward, his resolve hardening. "Those rules don't define you. We'll figure this out together." The conversation spiraled deeper, each word a step into uncharted territory. Ryan admitted he'd tried to please Tom his whole life, joining sports, hiding his feelings, even dating a girl to keep up appearances. "I thought I could fake it forever," he said, his voice raw. Jake shared his own story, moving to Seattle to escape a town that judged him, only to find the isolation of living half-openly. Their shared pain wove a stronger connection, a vow to support each other against the world's demands. Jake's honesty, bearing his own struggles, felt heroic in its vulnerability, giving Ryan a glimpse of hope. But the tension spiked when Ryan's phone lit up again. Not Tom, but a text from Alex, the guy he'd been seeing in Chicago. "Your dad called me. He's furious. I'm sorry." Ryan's breath caught, panic rising. "He's dragging Alex into this," he said, voice breaking. The betrayal stung. Tom wasn't just targeting Ryan, he was invading every part of his life. Jake's mind raced, imagining Tom confronting Alex, spreading his judgment further. The injustice of it, punishing Ryan for love, felt like a tightening noose. Jake grabbed his phone, texting a friend who ran a local support group. "We need backup," he said, his fingers flying. "Someone who knows how to handle this." Ryan's eyes darted to the door, as if Tom might burst through. "What if he cuts me off? My tuition, everything." The fear of losing his future added a new layer of conflict, the stakes climbing higher. Jake stood, pacing, his mind churning. "We'll find a way, scholarships, community help. You're not going back to that." His words were a promise, but doubt gnawed at him. Tom was his friend too, someone he'd laughed with, trusted. Standing against him meant risking that bond, maybe forever. As dawn broke, the air felt heavier, charged with the looming showdown. Ryan's phone stayed silent, but the threat of Tom's arrival pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake's actions, offering refuge, seeking resources, were a shield, but he knew they were only temporary. Tom's plane would land soon, and with it, a confrontation that could break everything. Jake looked at Ryan, his voice firm. "Whatever happens, I'm with you." Ryan nodded, but the fear in his eyes said he wasn't sure. The line between friendship and defiance had been crossed, and the fight for Ryan's freedom was just beginning. The airport's text alert buzzed at noon. Tom's flight had landed. Jake's pulse raced as he glanced at Ryan, who was pacing, phone clutched like a lifeline. "He's here," Ryan whispered, voice tight with panic. Could Jake shield his friend from the confrontation that was now inevitable? Jake, 38, had spent the morning rallying support for Ryan, 21, whose escape from Chicago had led to a night of raw confessions in Jake's Seattle apartment. After learning Tom, Ryan's father, had branded him a disgrace for being gay, Jake had vowed to stand by him. researching local resources and offering unwavering encouragement. Now, as Ryan's pacing grew frantic, Jake acted fast, dialing contact from a local LGBTQ+ support group. "Hey, Sarah, I need advice. Ryan's dad's in town, and it's bad," he said, his voice calm but urgent. The call was a lifeline, a heroic move to arm Ryan with support. Ryan paused, gratitude flashing in his eyes, his trust in Jake a quiet anchor amidst the storm. Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker, offering to meet them at a nearby cafe if things escalated. "You're doing the right thing, Jake," she said. "Ryan's lucky to have you." Jake nodded, hanging up, and turned to Ryan. "We got backup. You don't have to face him alone." Ryan's shoulders relaxed slightly, but his phone buzzed again. "Tom, I'm at your place in 20. Be there." The message was a cold command, its discipline laced with judgment. Jake's stomach churned at the injustice. Tom wasn't seeking understanding. He was demanding control, trying to force Ryan back into a life of hiding. "We can meet him on our terms," Jake said, grabbing his keys. "Not here, somewhere public, neutral." Ryan hesitated, then nodded, his trust in Jake outweighing his fear. They headed to a cafe down the street, Jake's quick thinking a shield against Tom's looming presence. At the cafe, Jake ordered coffees, his steady presence calming Ryan's nerves. "You say what you need to say," Jake told him. "I'm right here." Ryan's small smile, fragile but real, showed his appreciation, making Jake's resolve burn brighter. But the calm shattered when Tom stormed in, his voice cutting through the cafe's hum. "Ryan, we're leaving. Now." His tone was sharp, a father's authority weaponized to silence. Jake stood, stepping between them, his voice firm. "He's not going anywhere until you listen." The move was bold, protective, earning a flicker of hope from Ryan, but a glare from Tom. "Stay out of this, Jake," Tom snapped. "You're enabling him." The accusation stung, painting Jake's support as betrayal. The injustice of it, condemning Ryan's identity, dismissing Jake's loyalty, ignited Jake's anger. Tom turned to Ryan, his words relentless. "You think you can just run away? Lie this lifestyle? You're throwing everything away: college, family, respect." Ryan flinched, his voice barely audible. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm trying to be me." Jake's heart ached at Ryan's courage, but Tom's response was a slap. "You're confused. I'll fix this." The discipline in his words wasn't guidance. It was a demand to erase Ryan's truth. Jake clenched his fists, memories flooding back of his own battles, coworkers' snubs, his parents' silence when he'd come out. He wouldn't let Ryan face that alone. "Enough," Jake said, his voice rising. "He's not confused. He's your son, and he deserves your respect." The cafe went quiet, eyes turning to them. Tom's jaw tightened, his anger shifting to Jake. "You're out of line. You've always been too soft on him." The attack hit hard, threatening the friendship Jake and Tom had shared for years. Ryan's hand shook as he spoke up. "Dad, I'm not changing who I am. If you can't accept that, I can't come home." The words were a stand, brave but costly, and Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with dread. Tom's phone buzzed, a distraction, but he ignored it, staring Ryan down. "You'll regret this," he said, turning to leave. "Don't expect my support." The threat, cutting Ryan off financially, emotionally, was a final blow, a cruel injustice that left Ryan reeling. Jake grabbed his arm gently, grounding him. "You're not alone," he said, his voice steady. "We'll figure out." But as Tom's footsteps faded, the weight of the confrontation settled in. Ryan's future, tuition, stability, was at risk, and Jake's bond with Tom was fractured, maybe beyond repair. Back at the apartment, Ryan sat, stunned. "What do I do now?" he asked, voice hollow. Jake pulled out his laptop, pulling up scholarship sites and community resources. "We start here," he said, his actions a lifeline. But the tension lingered. Tom's threat, the public standoff, had raised the stakes. Jake knew helping Ryan meant defying Tom further, risking more than just their friendship. The conflict was far from over, and the fight for Ryan's freedom was about to get harder. Jake's phone lit up with a new message from Tom. "We need to talk." Alone. 3 months after their explosive cafe showdown, the words sent a chill through Jake. Ryan, now crashing at his place, was finally smiling again. Could Tom's demand unravel everything they'd fought for? Jake, 38, glanced at Ryan, 21, who was scribbling in a notebook, applying for scholarships to secure his future. After Tom's confrontation in Seattle, where he'd branded Ryan's identity a shame and threatened to cut him off, Jake had doubled down on supporting his friend. He'd connected Ryan with Sarah, a local LGBTQ+ group leader, who'd helped him find a part-time job. Ryan's determination to rebuild, despite his father's rejection, was a quiet act of courage, and Jake's tireless advocacy, hours spent researching aid, offering his couch, made him a steady anchor. "Got another application done," Ryan said, his voice lighter than it had been in weeks. Jake grinned, proud, but Tom's message gnawed at him. He replied cautiously, "Name the time and place." Jake's choice to face Tom, to protect Ryan's progress, was a bold move, risking their old friendship for Ryan's freedom. Ryan noticed Jake's tension, setting his pen down. "What's wrong?" he asked. Jake hesitated, then showed him the text. Ryan's shoulders tensed, the fear of Tom's control creeping back. "He's not done with me," Ryan said, voice low. The injustice of Tom's persistence, trying to dictate Ryan's life even now, stung. Jake stood resolute. "He doesn't get to decide your path. We'll handle this." Tom chose a park for the meeting, and Jake went alone, honoring Ryan's request to stay back. As Jake approached, Tom stood waiting, his posture rigid. "You're making this worse," Tom said, voice sharp, helping Ryan run from his responsibilities. The accusation was a lash, a disciplinary attempt to guilt Jake into stepping aside. Jake's anger flared. Tom wasn't just attacking Ryan's identity. He was dismissing Jake's loyalty. "His only responsibility is to himself," Jake shot back. "You're the one pushing him away." Tom's eyes narrowed, his words cutting. "You're no friend. You're confusing him." The confrontation escalated fast. Tom revealed he'd frozen Ryan's college fund, a punitive move to force compliance. "He'll come home when he's got nothing left," Tom said, his tone cold. The injustice hit Jake hard. Using money to control Ryan's truth was cruel, a betrayal of fatherhood. Jake remembered his own struggles, losing a job after being outed, facing his town's scorn. He wouldn't let Ryan endure that isolation. "You're wrong," Jake said, voice steady. "He's building a life here, without your strings." Back at the apartment, Jake shared the news with Ryan, who paled. "No fund? That's it. I'm done," Ryan said, panic rising. Jake grabbed his laptop, pulling up a community grant application Sarah had sent. "You're not done," he said, his quick action a lifeline. "We got options." Ryan's eyes met his, gratitude battling fear. But then Ryan's phone buzzed, a voicemail from Alex, his ex from Chicago. "Your dad called again. He's spreading lies about you." The betrayal deepened. Tom was targeting Ryan's past, tarnishing his relationships to isolate him further. Jake's resolve hardened. "We'll fight this," he said, dialing Sarah for legal advice. The tension spiked as Sarah warned them. Tom could escalate, maybe even involve authorities, claiming Ryan was unstable. The threat of such discipline, weaponizing Ryan's identity against him, felt like a noose tightening. Jake paced, mind racing. "We need a plan," he said, scribbling ideas. "A lawyer, a public statement, community support." Ryan nodded, his voice soft but firm. "I'm done hiding. I want to live my truth." His stand, small but defiant, was a spark of hope amidst the chaos. Days later, Jake and Ryan met Sarah at the support group's office. She'd rallied members to help with Ryan's applications, and one offered a spare room to ease Jake's burden. The group's warmth, their shared stories of defiance, lifted Ryan's spirits. Jake watched, pride swelling. Ryan was finding his place, despite Tom's efforts to break him. But the conflict wasn't over. Tom texted again, "Last chance, Ryan. Come home, or you're cut off for good." Ryan stared at the message, then deleted it. "I'm staying," he said, his voice steady. Jake nodded, a silent vow to stand by him. Weeks passed, and Jake reached out to Tom, sending a message. "Ryan's happy. Can we talk?" Tom's reply was curt but open, a crack in his armor. They met again, this time calmer. Tom admitted he was struggling but missed his son. Jake urged him to listen, not control. It wasn't reconciliation yet, but it was a start. Back home, Ryan smiled, now enrolled in a local college with a grant. Jake felt a weight lift. Helping Ryan had cost him Tom's trust, but it had given them both freedom. The fight for acceptance wasn't over, but they'd found a light in the dark together.